Welcome back to the Flying with the Flock podcast, best place to get all of your Eagles and other NFL related news. I'm your host, Matt, and ladies and gentlemen, we have made it. We are almost at Pro Bowl week, which is next week, and then we will be at the Super Bowl, which is roughly 2 weeks away. I think it's February 8th, technically, is when that is, so it's not this weekend, but it's the following one. And boy, do we have a good matchup. We have a rematch, Super Bowl 49. The New England Patriots versus the Seattle Seahawks. But before we jump into all of that and more, if you all could leave a like and subscribe down below, that would be much appreciated moving forward. There's a lot of things happening in the world of your Philadelphia Eagles. So we're just going to have to wait and see how everything shakes out. But I do have some updates for y'all. So without a further ado, let's hop right into it. So, where do we start? All right, let's start out with the head coaching openings, some of which got filled, some of which are still open, and what do I think is going to happen next for some of these teams. So the Ravens finally found their head coach in former Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. Jesse Minter has been able to coach up this Chargers defense to one of the statistically best in the league. And with the pieces that Baltimore currently has on defense, I would not be entirely surprised that Baltimore's defense will be, again, top tier in the league. Jesse Minter is a defensive head coach. He's defensive minded through and through, so they have to bring in a solid offensive coordinator to help them shore up Lamar Jackson and try to entice him to not try to force a trade. That's been the rumor right now since they went out and got defensive head coach that Lamar might be unhappy in a situation, which I don't think would be true, me personally, but we'll just have to wait and see. This is one of the first playoffs that I don't remember Lamar playing in a little bit. So obviously, he's going to be looking for a chance for redemption to get back into the playoffs. And I feel like this is a good first start overall for the Ravens. Now we need to see whether they bring in a guy like Cliff Kingsbury or Davis Webb, which is a name that you're going to be hearing later, to ultimately shore up some of this Ravens offense. Obviously, we went over the Giants. Giants hired John Hardball. Who were they? They're rumored to possibly bring on former Eagles defensive coordinator or defensive coach Denard Wilson. And that would be an interesting pairing. Not going to lie, Denard Wilson is one of the more aggressive defensive coaches when it comes to having his guys hawk down the ball and also having their guys tee off on the quarterback. And in a hardball system, I feel like that would work wonders. Now we need to see who they bring on as the offensive coordinator to kind of shore up Jackson Dart's development, Cam Scadaboo's health, and the overall scheme for the offense. But so far, the Giants have made the right moves on the coaching staff. We'll just have to wait and see how they keep all the pieces on that defense and eventually on the offense as well together. Let's see. I'll do all the teams that need a head coach in a little bit. Falcons hired Kevin Stefanski. There hasn't really been too many updates out of Atlanta besides hiring Kevin Stefanski. He's still probably trying to bring together his roster of coaches onto the coaching staff, but we'll just have to wait and see how they kind of deal with that down in Atlanta. Titans, there's a small update. Besides Robert Saleh, which we reported last week, was hired to become the head coach, they brought on Brian Daboll for their offensive coordinator role. I feel like he'll do wonders for Cam Moore's development. Daboll did really well when it came to, obviously, like we already mentioned a couple weeks ago, Josh Allen's development as a quarterback. He did pretty good at keeping Daniel Jones above water when it came to his quarterback play, for the most part. And so I'm excited to see how Cam Ward is going to be able to step up this next season. Not saying that the Titans are going to be like this, going to be a contender for the Super Bowl or anything, but if they can take a couple steps forward instead of one step forward, two steps back, which is what they've been doing, it will be interesting to see how this AFC South shakes up with a better Titans team. Dolphins hired Jeff Hafley. They also hired Bobby Slowick as their offensive coordinator. Not a bad choice. Now it's waiting to see what they do with player personnel, whether they keep Tua around for another year, whether Tyreek's going to come back. There's so many questions around the Dolphins when it comes to their player personnel, their aging defense, and so the Dolphins need a full rebuild. In my opinion, they need to get rid of Tua. They need to get rid of Tyreek. And they need to start building around Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle. But we'll get into what all 32 teams need to do to have some form of success this coming offseason. But we'll get to that after the Super Bowl. The Steelers, this was one of the bigger ones. After our show last week, it was announced that they hired former Green Bay and Dallas head coach Mike McCarthy. McCarthy is a great coach if you're looking to win now, don't get me wrong, but he's difficult to manage during a rebuild process, which was proven correct during his time in Green Bay, especially his later years. Steelers fans that I know are groaning because this almost just promises more of the same, early playoff exit after early playoff exit. But they seem to want a head coach, they, as in the Steelers front office, seem to want a head coach with already proven success in Pittsburgh. And McCarthy is kind of that guy. Out of all the rest of the guys out there in the head coaching sphere, it was between McCarthy and Brian Flores. Obviously, Flores re-signed with the Vikings to a new contract as their defensive coordinator. So McCarthy was kind of their last option, and he's a former Pittsburgh guy. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another AFC North win by the, or divisional win by the Steelers, locking up that same division under McCarthy a couple times, but they still have a lot of questions of what to do at quarterback, whether they're not in a good drafting position to draft a franchise guy, but they have a guy like Will Howard, who I've been big on for the past season, that he could possibly be your future if you can't get one immediately. And so we're going to have to wait and see what Aaron Rodgers decides. He hasn't officially retired yet, but I have a feeling that that's coming in a couple weeks after the Super Bowl. And that will allow Pittsburgh to kind of continue to rebuild around that quarterback position. And we'll see how they tackle that throughout free agency. Maybe Tua Tagovailoa goes to Pittsburgh. That's all I'm going to say. Next up, we have the Buffalo Bills. They hired their former offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, to be their head coach, obviously. To me, the problem was never the offense under Brady. He's been the play caller since 2023, and he has been one of the better play callers, in my opinion, throughout the NFL. The bigger problem was the defense is so bad that I wouldn't have been surprised if they brought in a defensive head coach. And since they didn't do that, now they have to bring in a really good veteran defensive coordinator, in my opinion. They need to bring in a guy that's going to shore up this defense and also be okay with rebuilding this defense. I mean, there are so many pieces that are old, so many pieces that are injured, that they need to inject new life into this Buffalo defense to try to get them up to a Super Bowl caliber level. Jesus, I can't speak. Oh, jeez. And so Joe Brady is a good hire. That's better than having him go coach for the Raiders or the Cardinals, who were probably the top two spots besides Buffalo for him to land in. But I'm still worried about this defense moving forward, and we'll have a deeper talk about this at a later date. All right, so currently there are only 3 teams with head coaching openings, that being the where are they? Cleveland Browns, Arizona Cardinals, and the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's see. Who do I think is going to be the Raiders? So I don't know who the front runner is right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, becomes the head coach for the Raiders. I also wouldn't be surprised if Rams offensive coordinator Matt LaFleur, brother to Mike LaFleur, becomes offensive coordinator as well. I feel like these are the 2 top guys that Brady is looking at to bring in and hire for the Raiders job. Both are proven products. Both took their teams to the NFC Championship game. Excuse me. So I think Brady's looking for a proven product. I think he's looking for an offensive guy. And I think the front runner right now is Kubiak, who's going to have to wait until after the Super Bowl, or LaFleur, who could be hired before the Super Bowl. But we're going to have to wait and see for the Raiders. Moving over to the Cardinals. The Cardinals are an interesting situation. Nobody knows what they're going to do with Kyler Murray, so it makes it more of an interesting situation than it needs to be. I think Kyler Murray might be on the move this upcoming season, and so with that being said, they might not go offensive minded like many people think. I think that they might go defense, and they need a good defense to keep up with teams like the Rams, if they can shut them down, and teams like the Seahawks, who they can go toe-to-toe with on defense. Oh, and the 49ers, who are just bad anyway, so what does it matter? But they recently just interviewed former head coach for the Panthers and the Commanders, Ron Rivera. I like Rivera for the Cardinals. Is a defensive-minded head coach. I feel like he could step in. He could try to shape up whatever defense Jonathan Gannon left in his departure, and he might actually be able to make it work. And so, moving forward, I think Rivera wouldn't be a horrible pick for the Cardinals, and I feel like he might be the front runner moving forward. And lastly, we have the Cleveland Browns. Browns, supposedly the current top candidate for them is Nate Scheelhaase from the Rams. Scheelhaase is definitely an interesting pick. I have him as one of the Eagles' offensive coordinators, which we'll get into in a little bit here. But Scheelhaase would bring an interesting style of offense to Cleveland that has not been there. Jim Schwartz also wouldn't be a horrible idea. Where's he at? Come on. Come on. Jim Schwartz. Where are you at, pal? Alright, give me a sec here. Jim Schwartz. His current, where is he? He was the offensive coordinator for the Browns. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets elevated because they already know him. They might be able to probably make a deal with Schwartz, pay him a little bit less just for this worse head coaching job. And it's better the devil that you know than the one that you don't. Obviously, Todd Monken is also up there. We've mentioned him for the past couple of weeks. But Monken, I feel like, might just end up taking an offensive coordinator job somewhere else. And I feel like it's down to Scheelhaase and Schwartz in Cleveland. All right. So we're going to move back over to some of these NFL championship games. And I'm just going to do what we normally do. And I'm going to read out the stats. And I'm going to tell you my thoughts. So let's go over to the ugly, ugly AFC Championship game between the New England Patriots and the Denver Broncos, in which the Patriots beat the Broncos 10-7 during shitty winter conditions where the downfall of snow was very heavy. Drake May went 10 for 21 for 86 yards through the air. On the ground, Ramondre Stevenson had himself a good day. He had 25 carries for 71 yards. Drake May had 10 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown. Receiving, Matt Collins had 2 receptions for 51 yards. And Stephon Diggs had 5 receptions for 17 yards. Hunter Henry also had 2 receptions for 12 yards. So there you go. And defensive-wise, they were able to intercept Jarrett Stidham once and also they also got 3 sacks on the quarterback, pressuring him just enough to throw him off his game. We'll come back to the Patriots in a little bit. Jarrett Stidham, speaking of the man of the hour, he went 17 of 31, 133 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Rushing-wise, R.J. Harvey was their leading rusher for this game. He had 13 carries for 37 yards. Jarrett Stidham had 4 carries for 23 yards, and Jaleel McLaughlin had 4 carries for 11 yards. Receiving, Marvin Mims had 4 receptions for 62 yards. He led the entire Broncos team and the entire game in receiving as well. R.J. Harvey had 4 receptions for 22 yards. And Evan Ingram had 2 receptions for 19 yards. And why not? I'll throw him on here because he deserves a mention. Courtland Sutton had 3 receptions for 17 yards and 1 touchdown. Defense-wise, they were able to sack Drake May 5 times, putting him flat on his back and really stalling out this pungent Patriots offense. So let's get into the big ideas. Obviously, Broncos lost. They're starting their backup quarterback. Yes, I've seen teams win with their backup quarterback, so that's not an excuse. The excuse would be, why in the hell would you have your backup quarterback throw 31 times in a bad weather condition game? That makes no sense to me. Sean Payton, again, proves that, yes, he's one of the greatest head coaches of all time. He's one of the biggest assholes of all time. And he doesn't know how to properly balance his offense in big games. He just normally goes heavy passing, which never works for him. If they fed Harvey a little bit more, maybe they moved the chains a little bit more. But with the conditions, everybody was slipping. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. And so it was an interesting situation during this game. The weather conditions coming in, and both teams' defense is really stepping up. That's been a big theme throughout this playoffs, is the Patriots' defense stepping up more than its offense does. And that's kind of how the Patriots won Super Bowls in the past, unfortunately, was their defense showed up and then their offense just did enough to win. Obviously, they're running into a buzzsaw on the other side, which we'll talk about. But the Broncos are going to be back, hopefully with Bo Nix. And the Patriots are moving on with quite a few glaring problems. Unable to pressure the quarterback. Unable to get a lot of sacks on the quarterback, which is just pressuring him, like I just said. Unable to generate a decent amount of offense against good defenses. So the Patriots moving forward have a lot of questions to answer, and they're not going to do it in a week. So let's give them 2 until the Super Bowl. Next up, we have the NFC Championship game between the Seattle Seahawks versus the Los Angeles Rams, in which the Seahawks won 31-27. This was the real Super Bowl, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, taking a look at it, the Seahawks, Sam Darnold, he went 25-36, 246 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air. On the ground, Kenneth Walker had 19 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown. And Sam Darnold had 3 carries for 9 yards, I guess. Receiving-wise, Jackson Smith-Njigba had himself a game. He had 10 receptions for 153 yards and 1 touchdown. Rashid Shaheed had 1 reception for 51 yards, but it was still a huge conversion. I think it was on 3rd down to get the Seahawks into a red zone and to ultimately put them ahead. Kenneth Walker had 4 receptions for 49 yards, and Cooper Kupp, one of my favorite receivers of all time, at least of the past decade, had 4 receptions for 36 yards and a touchdown on the day. Defense-wise, they were able to sack Stafford once, but it wasn't enough to really slow down this Rams offense, which is slightly concerning, which we'll get into why in a little bit. Moving over to the Rams, Matthew Stafford went 22-35, 374 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day. Another stellar performance by a quarterback in this championship game. Blake Corum was the leading rusher for this game. He went 9 carries for 55 yards. Behind him, Kyren Williams had 10 carries for 39 yards. And Matthew Stafford, out of all people, had 2 carries for 19 yards. That's kind of surprising to me. Receiving-wise, Puka Nacua also had himself a game. He had 9 receptions for 165 yards and 1 touchdown. That's some Madden stats right there. That's you log on to Madden and you just focus on one wide receiver the entire game. Davante Adams had 4 receptions for 89 yards and a touchdown. Colby Parkinson had 3 receptions for 26 yards. And I'll mention Kyren Williams since he had the other touchdown. He had 2 receptions for 22 yards and a touchdown. Defense-wise, they were able to sack Sam Darnold 3 times, but not able to force any turnovers, which would have put them ahead if they got that and then converted that into a touchdown. Looking at the big picture, like I said, ultimately this was kind of the Super Bowl. These 2 teams were the top 2 teams for me moving forward. Over the past couple of playoff games, playoff rounds, they've kind of proven that they were the 2 top teams in the NFL. One more known for their defense, the other one more known for their offense. And like I said, here's a fun little stat for you. Every time that a new pope is elected into the Catholic Church, the Seahawks get the first seed and go to the Super Bowl. Happened during the pope that was elected during the 2000s. I forget his name. It happened during Pope Francis, and they won that Super Bowl. And now Pope Leo got elected into being pope, and the Seahawks got the first seed and are now going back to the Super Bowl again. We're going to have to wait and see whether that plays out in a win or not. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Seahawks win the Super Bowl. And overall big themes, Rams, this is a tough one. Obviously, you're going to have talks about whether Stafford has it in him to go back again for another complete season. What moves, whether Davante Adams has it in him as well. Your coaching staff is probably going to get gutted on the offensive side for different pieces for other teams. And yeah, this is a rough one, Rams. I can't tell which one's worse for you guys. Last season, losing to the Eagles in the divisional, or this season, losing to the Seahawks in the conference championship. But I will say the Rams they keep knocking on the door, eventually they're going to kick it down. That's all I'm going to say. And Seahawks, congratulations, you guys made it to the Super Bowl. This is the Seahawks Super Bowl. I know this is your guys' third. Give me a sec here. I know this is your... Oh, fourth? Okay, so they reached Super Bowl. Where is it at? Come on. So they're 1-3 in the Super Bowl. They reached... Oh, come on. So I'm getting mixed reviews. It's saying that they've been... So they're 1-3. They've been to the Super Bowl 3 times. And they've won once. The Super Bowl in 2005, before I was born, which was Super Bowl... Oh, I'm horrible at reading that. Super Bowl 48. Super Bowl 48. Super Bowl 40. Well, they won in Super Bowl 48. They lost in Super Bowl 40, and they lost in Super Bowl 49. So they are it should be 1-2, but they're whatever. They're 1-3. No, they're 1-2. That's how it's said. They're 1-2 in the Super Bowl. So realistically, if they win this one, they can even out their record in the Super Bowl, which is similar to what the Eagles have to do. No, the Eagles are 2-3 in the Super Bowl. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. Seahawks have a solid chance at winning the Super Bowl this season. And looking at how their defense played against a high-powered offense like the Rams, I wouldn't be shocked if we see Sam Darnold be the first quarterback of the 2018 draft class to hoist a Lombardi over his head. Okay, so moving off of all the actual NFL games, it's going to be a couple weeks, or 2 weeks exactly, till we're able to really talk about it again in that kind of style for the last time this season. But let's move over to the Eagles' offensive coordinator talks. So a lot has happened since last week that has changed how the Eagles are going about their offensive coordinator search. And I have my own thoughts, and I'm going to give that to you. Let's go over the guys that I don't think are going to be it now, or can't be it because they got hired. Todd Monken, I think that if he doesn't get the head coaching job at the Browns, then he's probably just going to go up to New York to be with Harbaugh. Daboll got hired for offensive coordinator for the Titans. Kingsbury has not even been mentioned in the conversation with the Eagles yet. Stefanski, head coach for the Falcons. McDaniels went to become the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. Zach Robinson, a guy that I mentioned last week. Robinson was hired to become OC for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bobby Slowick, a guy that I mentioned last week. Slowick was hired to become offensive coordinator for the Dolphins. So I hate that whoever I mentioned keeps getting poached, but here we go. We got round 3, ladies and gentlemen, or round 4 or something. I have 3 new candidates. 3 ones that have been mentioned, had been heavily mentioned by the Eagles, or have had interviews with the Eagles, or have interviews set up. At number 1, we have Davis Webb. He's currently the offensive passing game coordinator and QB's coach for the Broncos. Bo Nix took a huge leap while Webb has been the passing game coordinator, which gives me a little bit of hope that maybe he could come in and help change some things up for this Eagles offense. Webb has also learned under Sean Payton and how a high-powered offense works in the NFL. He would bring a different look to the Eagles, which they have never had on offense, which is a Sean Payton-style offense of constantly subbing guys in and out. And then, and then ultimately being a high-powered passing offense. The only downside to me about Webb is that he could possibly be poached after the season for a head coaching gig. This would be a step up for Webb, and I feel comfortable enough having Webb call plays, although he hasn't been able to do it too much in the NFL. I would still feel confident enough in his abilities as a offensive play caller. Next up, I've already mentioned his name in a head coaching conversation, that being Nate Scheelhaase. Scheelhaase is currently the Rams passing game coordinator and is in his second year of studying under Sean McVay. Obviously, McVay, probably the greatest offensive mind in the NFL currently, and possibly of the 2000s or the 21st century. Scheelhaase has had an extensive history as a coach in football. He was head of Illinois football operations. Then he was also the Illinois running backs coach. He was the Illinois offensive assistant. Then he was the Iowa State running back coach, Iowa State wide receivers coach, Iowa State running game coordinator, running backs coach, and wide receivers coach. Then he was the Iowa State offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Then he got hired in 2024 to the Los Angeles Rams as the offensive assistant and passing game specialist. These are just titles. Do not get all wrapped up in what they are. And then he got hired, he was already with the Rams when he got bumped up to pass game coordinator. So Scheelhaase has had a lot of different experiences with a lot of different positions on offense. And Scheelhaase could design a balanced offense which could make quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers happy, which tends to be rare. Scheelhaase, for me, is my favorite option out of these three. But he, to me, is the least likely out of the three that I'm going to mention here today. And Scheelhaase ultimately is probably going to get poached for a head coaching job. And Scheelhaase, I think, is ready to take the next step as an offensive coordinator, but he would only be here for like a year, if not two, if we could bribe him a little bit more. So, although he has the extensive history, that kind of does not play into our favor in this instance. And last but not least, we have Sean Mannion. Mannion, I'm sure you have never heard of Sean Mannion, and I didn't until 2 days ago. Mannion is currently the quarterbacks coach for the Green Bay Packers and has been coaching for the Packers, or just in general, for the past 2 years. Mannion was a quarterback in the NFL from 2017 to 2023, and he got the gig coaching under a really good offensive head coach in Matt LaFleur. Although Mannion has not had the same play calling experience that we would hope that our offensive coordinator would have, and especially the people on this list have had, he has played under a plentiful amount of amazing offensive minds in the NFL in the 21st century as a quarterback. Going down the list, he was a quarterback under Sean McVay from 2017 to 2018, Kevin Stefanski in 2019, Clint Kubiak, who we've already mentioned, who could be a possible head coaching candidate in 2019, Drew Petzing in 2019, Dave Canales, who's the Panthers head coach and was the Buccaneers offensive coordinator who really got them started and going in 2022, Kevin O'Connell, the quarterback whisperer, in 2023, and Grant Udalinsky, who's the offensive coordinator for the Jaguars in 2023. So there is quite a few people that he could steal offensive schemes from. And as a quarterback, he would know what Jalen would like and what he would not like, and what it's like to be an NFL quarterback, which is something that Kevin Patua did not understand. And look, I know we have one more big point with the Eagles coming up here in a little bit, but I just need to talk about this for a second here. Last time the Eagles hired a quarterbacks coach from Green Bay with very little play calling experience, it worked out well. That was, can you guess it? Andy Reid. Although Reid never found the success that we had hoped he would, he came damn close, and he was still an amazing offensive mind that was hidden behind being stuck as a quarterbacks coach. If we do the same thing for Mannion, and Mannion comes out and he just looks amazing as a play caller, and he stays around for 2-3 seasons, I'm not going to complain. The Eagles, since the year 2000, have taken risks for their offensive play calling. And most of the time it has worked out, sometimes it hasn't. Andy Reid was a risk. After Reid, Chip Kelly was a risk. Now that one didn't work out for as long as we had hoped, but Chip Kelly was a risk. Doug Peterson didn't call plays, was the quarterback's coach for the Chiefs, was a risk. Nick Sirianni wasn't calling plays under Frank Reich in Indianapolis, was a risk. Bringing in Shane Steichen, allowing him to call plays, was a risk. And although some of these things have proven out to be successes, you have to take the risk. And so you're going to get Kevin Petulas of the world. You're going to get Brian Johnsons of the world. But if you don't take those risks and you play it safe, you're not going to win. You have to bring in guys with different ideas, and you have to be able to accept that and keep moving forward. And so that's why in the next week, I feel like you're going to hear news that the Eagles are finalizing their top 2 for the offensive coordinator role. They have not offered the job to anybody yet. And so I feel like they're going to finalize. If Shieldhouse is still around, I feel like Shieldhouse is going to be their top guy. If Shieldhouse is down, then Webb is going to be their top guy. And if both gentlemen find work elsewhere, Mannion is not a bad decision to go with. He's also serving as offensive coordinator of the West team in the 2026 East versus West Shrine Bowl for the college senior East versus West Shrine Bowl BS that they have. One last story that I want you guys to keep an ear out for, and I'll keep my eye on it. Adam Schefter this morning went on 97.5 The Fanatic, and he gave a very vague message. Now, I think he knew what he was doing. He was trying to drum up some vagueness that would lead to talk about Nick Sirianni or A.J. Brown. But to me, the way that he's kind of phrasing it and what he was talking about, I don't have the exact quote, and I won't have that for you. But here's my guesses at what he was talking about. Lane Johnson's retirement, Jeff Stoutland's retirement, which would surprise me a little bit more, but still, he did not have a good season as offensive line coach, or an Eagles stadium change. Now, I'm not talking about like a dome, but something along the lines of what the Bills have, possibly. I would want you guys to keep an ear out for yourself, do your own research, and give me your opinion in the comments below if you made it this far. Tell me, what do you think Adam Schefter was talking about? What could this be big news in the next week be besides offensive coordinator? Because he specifically said that it wasn't about the offensive coordinator. So what could it be? We're going to have to wait and find out. But there's something big coming with the Eagles organization, whether it's a player, coach, or stadium retirement. All right, so that's it for this episode of the Flying with the Flock podcast. I want to thank you guys for listening. We're going to get into a dry season of stuff, but I have a couple ideas of what I can do. Some stuff I've already kind of alluded to you guys. But we're going to have to wait and see. The big thing on the Eagles' plate right now is finding an offensive coordinator, and I wouldn't be shocked if the top three that I mentioned, Davis Webb, Nate Scheelhaase, and Sean Mannion, become the top guys in the conversation. All right, so that's it, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And remember, go Birds.